I'd like to make a quick video. This is based on a tweet that I saw in August of 2024. And I saw it in my notes today and I thought, I could make a quick video about this, cross it off my list. It's some troubling data. Now, like I said, I've made this into a spreadsheet, but the facts came from that tweet. And so you can fact check this on your own. Maybe the details are true, maybe they're not. The point still sticks. The bottom line is that farmers today make far less than farmers did just 50 years ago. And that is a big problem. Food prices are going up. They're going to keep going up. If you dig into the details of why they're going up, you'll see it's a multifactorial issue. There are a lot of pieces in play. But one of them is that as inflation has raged through some segments of the employment sector, so tech, healthcare, whatever the case may be, there are huge swaths of the economy where that inflation has not yet hit, such as the trades, although they're catching up. And a big one is farming. Farmers just haven't gotten pay raises in the last 50 years in the same way as a lot of other trades, or jobs, I should say, have. That is going to come to bear. And the reason is the people who are farming right now, they tend to be really old. They came on the scene and started farming about the mid-1970s. And now they're coming out of that because they're too old to do it anymore, and they're dying off, and their kids do not want to do it. Their kids aren't interested in making $35,000 a year as a rancher in Montana, right? Living on property that's now worth $12 million that their parents bought for a lot less than that, or their grandparents for almost nothing, right? So as they get out of that, what happens is the investors come in, they buy the land, and they either jack up the prices doing some sort of, just to focus on cattle. Cattle ranchers typically wholesale their beef. You go to the grocery store, you see a steak for $16 a pound, you see ground beef for $5 a pound. You know what that farmer's getting? About $3.25 a pound. They load up their cows on cattle cars, they ship them out to slaughterhouses, and they get almost nothing. Almost all of that money goes to the middlemen. The people and they're doing work. It's not like they're not doing anything, but they're butchering these things, and they're distributing it. And by the time it shows up on the shelf at Costco, it's been marked up a massive percent from what the farmer got, or the rancher. And so it goes with all these different products that you buy at the store. The farmers aren't getting the money. Now, there are exceptions. There are these massive mega farms, but that's not what you're thinking of when you're thinking of a farmer, right? So there's so much more to this, and I don't want to make this video longer than it needs to be, but I just want to show you some data here that supports this idea that food prices are going to explode. They have to. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And this is just one slight piece of the analysis, but the question is by how much? And you are going to be absolutely shocked at the answer to that question. So this analysis, it's prices of things in 1974 versus today, from the farmer's perspective. Do you know how much farmers get for wheat as of August 2024? $5 a bushel. Do you know how much farmers got paid for wheat in 1974? It's really close to $5 a bushel, $4.81. Okay, well, what did a truck cost back then? An F-250. You could get one for about $4,000, the base model. You know how much the base model costs in 2024? $76,000. What about tractors? Now, there are all kinds of different tractors, so this tweet gave a range of prices for this. But an average tractor on the low end of cost, back then, about $7,500. Today, $100,000. An expensive one, back then, was about twice that, $15,500. Today, it's $250,000. So how much did a loaf of bread cost in 1974? About 25 cents. You know what it costs in 2024? If you go to the store, you do, it's $4. How much did a farmer get for his contribution of the wheat per loaf in 1974? So a loaf of bread's 25 cents. The farmer got 6 cents of that. Today, he still gets 6 cents. You see the problem? So the baker's getting more, the truck drivers are getting more, the company that owns all that's getting more. The farmer's not getting more. So as a percent of the price of the loaf, in 1974, 24% of that price went to the farmer. Today it's 2%. So here's my question. How much would a farmer's wages have to increase now to restore how much they used to make in 1974? Well, if we go down the line here are the factors. 19 times, 13 times, 16 times, and we have 2 of those, and then 12 times. Okay? So this is just some quick napkin math. But what we see, what do you think would happen to the cost of food if all of a sudden the farmer said, we're not doing this unless we get paid? It's not like all the other players would say, oh, okay, we're going to cut back to make room for that. The consumer would just have to pay more. And guess what's going to happen? Do you know anything about private equity? Do you know what that phrase means? So, this is how people like Mitt Romney made their money. These are companies that don't actually do very much except buy up existing companies and find ways to make them more profitable. And that's a glamorous way of saying things. Usually they do a lot of accounting tricks. So they'll agglomerate a bunch of companies and move the debt off into one or jostle it around in whatever ways so they can save money on taxes. Or they buy up a couple of competitors in a space and then they make an argument that this is now a more valuable company because they've eaten up some of the competition or whatever. It's not exactly a virtuous cycle, right? Private equity knows that there are all these jobs out there that have not really grown with inflation. And they're snapping up, in this case, farms, but they're doing this with HVAC companies, roofing companies, you name it. They're buying out these old timers for what the old timers see as massive amounts of money, multiples of their annual revenue. And then they're just raising the prices. This is coming to food. I'm telling you right now. If you look at the people who might take over for these farmers, there is no supply of people who are willing to do this for the money that they're making doing it. And that's if I'm talking about the kids, okay? If their kids don't want to do it, the only option is either for the farmland to be sold off to developers, which means there's less supply for the same amount of demand, or for someone to get a loan and buy that outrageously priced land and keep farming it. And they will absolutely have to raise the prices. So I've told you many times, but here's some data. Here's another reason to expect it. Food prices are going to go up by multiples of what they are today. Okay? I'm trying to warn you as clearly as I can. The United States has lived for generations with extreme advantages in prosperity compared to the rest of the world. And for a long time, it has not been based on more prosperous circumstances. It's just a residual situation. If you want to know what's coming here, you need to go look around the rest of the world. Look at how they live in Europe. People don't have 3 cars. People don't live in 2,000 plus square foot houses. People don't have yards. They live in apartments, and they don't own them. And a lot of them don't have any cars, but maybe they have one. And they don't eat tons of food, and they really don't have a lot of money. If you look at the average incomes in Europe, most people are poorer than the poorest Americans. And that's a shock for us to hear. But look at the data. Look at the data. If you look at the average income in the, say, 5 poorest states in the United States, they still make more money than people in Europe. But that's coming here. And I think that we're going to blow right through that and start comparing ourselves to South America. And if you've ever been there, things are very different. Very, very different. But by the way, we all live in these huge houses and nice townhouses and whatever. So as the cost to maintain our current lifestyles keeps going up, something's got to give. Some of those changes will be generational, which means your kids won't have as nice a life as you do, but people don't see this coming. You know, I just had a conversation with a new acquaintance of mine, a guy who's into homesteading. He's got a young family, whatever. We have a lot in common. And I met him online. And I said, have you ever talked to your kids and kind of realized that they're not going to have the kind of life that you have? He said, oh, I think they have a chance of doing that. And I was like, oh, well, let's talk about some things. It's amazing how delusional we are. I mean, it is not normal. And I know this isn't the case of most people in this country, but there are an awful lot of people who live kind of a gentleman kind of life where, yeah, they have a job. It's really flexible. They probably work remote. They get paid scads of money. They can live wherever they want. They don't have to look at the receipts when they buy things. That is not a normal situation. And unless you're adding scads of value to your company who actually makes something that's useful, which is like, we're basically at 0% of the population at this point, or 0% of companies out there, you need to understand that the music's going to stop. And there aren't enough chairs for everybody. Don't think that just because you've enjoyed something to this point, it's going to keep going. Look at the basis for what you enjoy. Is there a rational reason for you to get paid as much as you do, for your company to make as much money as it makes? Or is it just this VC-controlled nonsense of funny money? And do you, check into a couple meetings and, yeah, you got to work hard a couple of times a week, but it's super flexible. You basically do whatever you want. If you're in that situation, you need to understand that is a time-limited opportunity. The music's going to stop, I'm telling you. I can't tell you when it's going to happen, but there's going to come a point where you have to look at the receipts when you buy stuff. It's coming. Okay? And so it behooves you to start thinking about the long term and making a rational plan for what you're going to do as things fall apart. Because they're already falling apart, it's going to get worse.